Good evening everyone and welcome to week 18 of At Home with Matt. Before I begin my message this evening, I just wanted to start by saying a big thank you to all those who have sent messages, emails, cards and flowers since our announcement last Sunday. We have just been overwhelmed by the outpouring of love shown towards us, and it's been truly humbling to read and receive all the messages of support, and we don't take it lightly or for granted. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. I'd like you to think about the following three scenarios. You may have already experienced some or all three of these. Scenario number one: in a rush to work this morning, you spill coffee all over yourself. You utter the words, "Why, God, why?" as the coffee's just stained your shirt. Okay, no big deal. Scenario number two: you get some difficult feedback on a project that you've been working hard on at work. Why, God? Why? That one hurts just a little bit more. Scenario number three: on the way home after work, you're already running late, but you find out you have a flat tyre and you need to call the breakdown service that you're with, and you find yourself uttering the words, "Why, God? Why?" The truth is, all of those examples are small compared to what some people are experiencing. But we've all been there, haven't we? Nothing seems to be going right, and we ask God that simple question, why? Why is this happening to me? After everything I've done for you, Lord, I'm such a good person compared to that person at work. At times, our expectations of what God should do are different from what he actually does. If God always met our expectations, he wouldn't be God. He'd be our personal assistant. No one knew this better than John the Baptist. John was sitting in prison all because Herod was mad that John dared to challenge his relationship choices. And you can read all about that story in Mark chapter 6, verses 17 to 29. It's a crazy story, just read it. John was most likely waiting on Jesus to come and rescue him. After all, why wouldn't Jesus come and rescue him? In Matthew 11:3, John asks this of Jesus through his disciples: "Are you the Messiah we've been expecting, or should we keep looking for someone else?" In other words, are you really who you say you are? Are you actually the Messiah? Because it seems like if you were, I wouldn't be sitting here in this filthy prison cell. Or maybe he even asked something like this: "Why, God? Why?" When I read this, I would expect that Jesus would show up triumphantly, break down the prison walls and rescue John. Instead, Jesus says this in verses 4 to 5. "Go back to John and tell him what you've heard and seen. The blind see, the lame walk, those with leprosy are cured, the deaf hear, the dead are raised to life, and the good news is being preached to the poor." He doesn't answer John's question directly with a yes or no answer, but I think as soon as John heard this, he knew that Jesus was the Messiah. After all, how else could the blind see, the deaf hear, and the dead be raised to life? Then Jesus adds something that kind of reframes everything and proceeds to turn it all upside down. He added in verse 6, "God blesses those who do not fall away because of me." What? I'd have thought Jesus might say, "God blesses those who don't fall away because of the temptations of the devil," or "God blesses those who don't fall away even when culture isn't aligned with God's values," or "God blesses those who don't fall into sin." He didn't say any of that. He says, "God blesses those who do not fall away because of me." Or in another translation of that same verse, it says, "God blesses those who are not offended by me." Essentially, Jesus was saying that you're blessed if you're not offended by God's activity or at times the seemingly lack of activity? Honestly, that's so hard for us to get our minds around. We often expect that God will answer all of our prayers in the way we want, and if he doesn't, we assume it's because we didn't have enough faith. And I've heard people say that to me on so many occasions. Jesus is saying that some people will be disappointed by his lack of activity, or his perceived lack of activity. The marriage still fell apart. The cancer wasn't cured. The eyesight wasn't restored. The prodigal son never returned. And don't forget, John the Baptist ended up being beheaded in prison. Our circumstances are not necessarily a reflection of his goodness and faithfulness, but his presence is. A friend of mine once said to me, and I love this quote, "You're blessed when you can trust God in the valleys, even after you've seen him move mountains." You're blessed when you're in the valleys, even when you've seen God move mountains. And I've seen God do some spectacular things in my life, but I've also had to cope with the times when heaven was silent and inactive. Sometimes the blessing is there, even without the breakthrough. If you're going through a difficult season right now, and so many of us are, I pray you'll trust he's good, even when you're disappointed by him and you're tempted to say, "Why, God? Why?" Let's pray together. And I'd like to use a prayer from David Adams' book Tides and Seasons, which really picks up on this theme of Christ being with us from the beginning to the end. It's entitled Christ, Everlasting Friend. Please pray with me. Christ in my beginning, Christ there at my end, Christ be in my journey, Christ everlasting friend, Christ be in my waking, Christ at my repose, Christ in every action, Christ when eyelids close. Amen. Friends, take care, stay safe, praying for you all, and just pray that you'll know God's blessing and God's touch this coming week. And I'll see you all next week for another instalment of At Home with Matt. Take care.